What's up, what's good, what's cracking? My name is Kraken Atkins. It appears that it's time to have another opinion on the internet. All right, so what we have here is a beginner's tier list. I contacted some help. I had the likes of SoCal Zone, West Coast Zone, North America Zone, and the World Zone, one of the best BBTAG players out there, YoFavScrub, to help me. YoFavScrub, how you doing?
All right, thanks for having me here. Glad I can help with this.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we were just kind of having some banter the other day. I've been kind of on my Mitsuru propaganda, and so we had a mutual friend who's been learning the game. Of course, I said play Mitsuru, and you're like, why would you recommend Mitsuru to a beginner? One thing led to another, and now we're doing a tier list video. For, like,
not exactly
characters.
a tier list, but kind of a tier list.
It's just like we wanted to create a guide because there's been a lot of buzz about this game recently. The announcement of Project L and kind of some of the mechanics in that game. A lot of people have been kind of turning an eye to BBTAG and saying, like, you know, maybe I should get in this game, kind of interested in this game. I've had like a ton of people just like over the past couple of months ask me like who would be good characters to play in this game. I know you've had the same, like within like our local scene. There's been like some Grand Blue players that have been wanting to pick up the game. Yep. Right? This feels like a good video to make. It seems like a good time to make it. Happy to do it and happy to have you here to help me. Before jumping too deep into it, I actually wanted to get into a gripe that I tend to have with lists of this kind. I wanted to have this list be really straightforward in what it's trying to say. Like, I feel like people too commonly get lost in the idea of like a beginner list or a beginner tier list to say like, oh yeah, these characters are the easiest to execute with, and they make a like execution tier list, or like, oh yeah, these characters have like the simplest win conditions, and then they make like a simple win conditions tier list. Go for it.
I was gonna say a lot of the tier lists out, not to say that they're bad, but it's like they don't really focus on the big picture. It's kind of like a really niche thing. Like you said, it's like execution, traditional tier list where it's like, oh, this is the top tier and whatnot.
Right. Yeah. 1000%. So hopefully this list is there to judge for people that are looking for a character that is not too hard to pick up, teaches you fundamentals of the game, or like how to play the game as it relates to a 2v2 centric playstyle, active switch, cross combo, all that stuff, and like scales well into high level. So like you'll be able to like pick up the character, have fun with them, and like if you want to like pursue the game even further, can set you up for success when you start competing down the line. With that prefacing out of the way, introductions out of the way, we can go ahead and start explaining what the tiers mean. At the top, we have amazing choices. The way I ideally define amazing choices is just kind of like fitting the mold of everything that I just explained a couple seconds ago, right? These are characters that have straightforward kits, pretty good support value, not too crazy on the execution, and a lot of characters on this list are pretty like handily within like the top echelon of characters, right? Directly under that, we have great choices. So these are also characters that fit a little bit of that mold, right? You know, these are also not the most execution heavy characters in the world. Really nice to pick up and play. Also scale extremely well into like high level play. Just maybe not as straightforward, maybe not as beneficial as like some of the characters in amazing choices. Not like by too much of a degree, but enough in order to make a tier distribution for it and put them in great choices. Then we have valuable but will take work, and this is the only tier on this list that's ordered, and it's ordered in terms of complexities. Every character on this tier is amazing, you know, like fantastic characters. However, they are on the higher end of things when it comes to difficulty, and difficulty is kind of measured different on like a character by character basis for this tier. We'll get to that later when we get to like defining a little bit more. These characters are good, but they may take some work. Then we have the if you think they're cool, you should 100% do it tier. This is getting into more specialist type of characters. Again, like these characters aren't bad, but they definitely have like a unique playstyle or some quirk about their kit that may not be the most immediately apparent or most immediately valuable. Some of them might take quite a bit of like innovation in order to make happen just because of how rare they are nowadays. But we know at least that they are good characters. Below that, we have may come with some struggles, and that one, it's in the name. they may come with some struggles.
These are the knowledge check characters. They're very niche. They don't have a lot of active players, I would say. They're going to take more work than those above them. It's going to take work in the sense of like maybe execution, for example, like Platinum, or like weird gameplay such as Hazama.
The last but not least tier here we have is the be careful tier. Are we summarizing these tier as the characters of like we would be very hesitant to recommend to people? Will we flat out say that we would tell people not not to play them?
I would say probably hesitant. Because I'm never gonna say like, oh, you shouldn't play this character. I think if you want to play a character, then you can play a character. I'm not gonna gatekeep someone just because they're picking like someone that they're definitely going to struggle with.
Exactly. And I'm glad you said that. You know, there's a reason why it's called Be Careful and it's not called like Do Not Play or Avoid at all costs. Because at the end of the day, this is BBTAG. This game is fun as hell. There's so many freaking characters in this game. There's so many like character combinations that we've never seen before. And so you don't want to like gatekeep anyone from like their ideology or going into anything. But me and Scrub also want to set you up for success. And so if there's anything that you should be wary about, we want to let you know, and that's what the Be Careful tier is for. Let's go top to bottom and start with the top here and start with amazing choices. Scrub, what immediately jumps out at you or anything that you want to say about the amazing choices tier?
I think in the amazing choices tier, it's a lot of like super apparent win cons, overall simple game plan, you know, characters that you can just pick up and, you know, start actually playing BBTAG. They can abuse the system mechanics and I guess control the pace of the game to a sense.
Right. No, yeah, that makes 100% sense to me. I mean, like they aren't too crazy of a game plan to try to get a hold of. Really, some of the big standout characters to me on this list are very obviously like Ruby, Yumi. Like Ruby is a character that has definitely been a beginner friendly type of pick, but also scales extremely well for the past 4 years. This character has always been like very relevant within the metagame, at least for North America, right? She's like extremely consistent, extremely accessible, but also scales very well. Also, something worth noting about this amazing choices list. So we're making this video in December 2022. On the year to date, from like basically CEO 2021 all the way up until CEO Taku 2022, pretty much all of these characters have been represented in top 8s for the majors that we have had. If not the majors, they've been represented in some of the more stacked regional tournaments that we had. Combo Breaker, Vortex Gallery, all of these characters have had some type of appearance. So that's also a merit to their strength, and really the amazing choices tier is kind of representative of strength plus ease of use and just plus overall fit within the meta, and just like all of these characters do this so insanely well. I think another thing that I want to emphasize, the synergy some of these characters have with like the vast majority of the cast. Yumi's support potential, her support kit is pretty good. Having Yumi on a duo for characters that you want to play in the game, I'm never gonna say that like it's immediately a bad idea. Like Yumi can be a pretty good character to put onto your team. Ruby, very similar thing. Ruby can also be a very good character to put on your team. She has synergy with a lot of different types of characters. And I feel pretty similarly about like a Akatsuki and a Adachi as well.
Emphasizing like on the synergy part, it's like super important in this game, and obviously everyone in this list synergizes well in either their own specific teams or anyone else from this tier list. They can kind of like make things work. They're kind of like the glue of BBTAG in a sense.
For sure 1000%. So yeah, that kind of wraps up amazing choices. Jumping over to great choices, what jumps out to you as it relates to the great choices tier that we have here, Scrub?
Main things that pop out here is these are all really good characters. They're all very simplistic in a way. They're just not as strong. I would still say like these are really good characters to learn BBTAG with. They have pretty simple win cons, pretty simple game plans.
I think what it is like their ease of use and like their value is marginally not as prevalent as the people in amazing choices, right? Okay, so like look at characters like Yumi in comparison to like a character like Batista, right? Both are pretty solid support characters. They have like very solid lockdown potential in the form of like their 5p assists, pretty good screen control in the form of like their 6p assists and things of that sort. But when it comes to the overall grip on the metagame and just overall apparent strength, I think 10 out of 10 BBTAG players would say that Yumi is a stronger character than Batista. Yeah. It's not like that Batista is bad. Her support potential is amazing and some of the best in the game. It's just that in terms of like the overall grip that she has on the meta, her like relative strength and things of that sort, it's not really warranted enough to put her in the amazing choices category, but she's a really good beginner character in my opinion.
I think for the amount of effort that these two tiers need to put in, amazing choices reaps so much more from said effort. I was in a voice chat with others earlier today, and we were talking about like, oh, you know, Akatsuki's parry is so good compared to like other parries. We took the two examples, Akatsuki and Hakumen. Both can completely nullify stuff. It's just Hakumen gets to do it once, and he doesn't get to play rock, paper, scissors after. He's blocking. Akatsuki can parry anything like, you know, infinitely, theoretically. And then he gets to play a heavily skewed RPS game that's in his favor, since he can instantly do a move after, jump cancel, or special cancel, super cancel, or he can choose to do another DP. The amount of options he has off a successful parry are like crazy.
Absolutely. But that's not to sleep on some of these characters and great choices. I actually want to highlight Susanoo, because that was a character that we had a conversation about pre-recording of like, do we put him in amazing choices or do we put him in great choices? Like Susanoo is a really, really great character that gives you access to a ton of damage, fantastic active swap potential, and just really teaches you some core fundamentals of the game of how it relates to mix-ups and even getting access to some unblockables, similar to a character like Akatsuki. It just really comes down to the way that he has to play neutral and him having like a little bit of a slow acceleration dash, right? So where he has to like speed up before he gets going. It's just like those minute things are kind of like the reason why we have him in great rather than amazing. But yes, at 1000%, he's a great character to learn BBTAG with. Are you kidding me? Like, there are a few characters in this tier that, like, although I do think they're great choices, pretty easy to pick up, very strong. Some of them may have a playstyle that is pretty specific to them. I kind of looking at Chie when I say this. So like Chie is a pretty straightforward like brawler type of character. There is a little bit of nuance like for power charge combos, making sure that you have those down so you could be really threatening when you land game-winning hits and force mistakes out of people or kill people for their mistakes. But there are parts of her kit like her JC and her meteors that are like parts that characters don't really have. Like she's has a basically disjointed persona attack that she's able to set up that gives her a massive amount of plus frames, and it's a good air to air, and she like recovers super fast. Like there's not really characters that have a tool like that in BBTAG, so just something to be mindful. I mean, like every character in the game kind of has their own specific kit. That is what makes the game so special, is that all these characters are so centralized. But the great choices, you may also run into some characters that have a little bit less of a accessible type of play style and getting into more niche territory, but nothing too complex. All right, with great choices done, amazing choices done, we're now going to get into characters that have a little bit more nuance. Yo, you're playing BBTAG. These characters are very, very fantastic choices. Every character like below this are going to have a little bit more explanation around it for one reason or another. And so that takes us to the valuable but will take work category. And this is the only category that's ordered by complexity. These characters are great. They are characters that are as good as characters in the great choices tier. Hell, I see a few that are as good as some characters in the amazing choices tier, to be honest. They aren't immediately accessible. They definitely will take some work in order to get used to them for one reason or another. Rachel, she has like a win mechanic that she has to work with to like propels her to different parts of the screen. So overall, this combo pickups can be a little bit tough to manage, as she has a ton of conversions that are available out of like stray hits that are necessary in order to play her well. And just her overall game plan approach is really unorthodox, with a lot of like the rapid decision making and movement that you have to do with her. But there's a reason for that. It's because it's freaking amazing. Yeah. Aegis is a resource management character or geometer. A lot of her high damage combos and just overall mobility and mix-up potential is kind of tied to that meter, so there is a resource management layer to her game plan. She also really has a pretty niche kit. Her assists can be a little bit awkward. They aren't as immediately accessible as some of like the characters in like the amazing choices and great choices tier, but she is like an insane like mix-up character, does a ton of damage, and has a good bit of screen control within her bullets on her B buttons as well. 9 is sick.
I mean, she's a pretty cool character.
So she has her magic bar, and there's basically 4 different levels per se. There's when it's all the way empty, and then you get like a level 0 spell. Yes. There's when there's like it's filled between 1% and like 49%, and you get a level 1 spell, which is either the ball or the mirror that reflects projectiles. If your bar is between 50 and 99%, that's level 3 spells. You get the plant, which is like the low hitting seed, and then you also get the ball that creates a cross. We call it smash ball.
Smash ball.
Yeah, we call it smash ball. It creates a cross and it has like a delayed hitbox attached to it. And then last but not least, she has her level 4 spell. That's when the bar is completely full 100% of the way. And then she has the fairy that travels across the screen across different angles. And she also has the meteor shower. With that elongated explanation, I think that alone kind of explains why she's in the valuable but will take work category. There's a lot going on with this character, and it's tied to a resource that is constantly changing, literally based on something as simple as walking. Because like walking gives you meter, having opponents block attacks gives you meter, having opponents get hit by attacks gives you meter, and so you're constantly kind of cycling through neutral and combo options dependent on how much of that magic meter that you do have.
Speaking of walking, her mobility is also not traditional in this game. She has no run, she can only walk, and she has 4-way teleport.
So yeah, a little bit of an odd character, but very, very good. Why would we have Kurogane here on the complexity tier?
I don't want to say he's the most technical character in the game, but he's by far not the easiest. He has dash cancels, specific routings that lead into like, phantom pain loop, certain heights of his DP where you can combo after it.
Out of everybody on this tier, he's kind of like the one that's here pretty much solely because of execution, yes, for the most part. Because a lot of his tools, just like looking at them, do look very inviting, right? Like who doesn't want to use 4P? Who doesn't want to use like some of like the lariat types of like specials that he has? A lot of those tools are extremely fun to use and not too hard to pick up and play. When it comes to like optimizing the character, you are getting into some of the more execution heavy characters in this game if you're picking up Kurogane. Teddy is also kind of on the list for similar reasons to Nine. There's a lot of resource management going on with him. His is just a little bit different. He's an item throw character, and like he has items that are set in a set rotation at the beginning of the match, and a lot of your combo optimizations and a lot of your neutral is kind of dictated by what item is coming up and things that are happening in the match.
Yeah, so Teddy's one of those characters where it's like you need to have total awareness of what's happening in the match. You need to have situational awareness on combo starters and whatnot, what item you have. I think a great example of the top echelon of Teddy players are like Mustache Villain, Pizamayo, Durame. They all play Teddy in like totally different styles and they all make it work, but all of them are each technically demanding in their own way.
And then we have Yuzuriha. What are your thoughts about Yuzuriha?
She's two different characters in one. Stance Yuzu is completely different from non-stance Yuzu. Most of the time you should be in stance, but you need to understand how to fight as Yuzu while not in stance, because you're not always going to be there. Understanding her mobility and how it changes when she enters stance, how her buttons are affected while she's in stance. She kind of has a bit of a negative edge barrier. It's like, do a slash, hold a button at the end of your 3 slashes, and you're in stance.
And the last two we have here, so we have Izuyoi. Izuyoi is a mobility demon. So like if you love mobility, you will definitely find a home with this character. She has 2 different types of dashes, because she has her regular hold forward dash, and then she has her, she has like her hover dash, where if you like double tap forward, she hovers forward. Think of like Morgan from Marvel or Darkstalkers. She has like that type of dash.
From Guilty Gear.
Yeah, that's actually a better comparison. It really definitely opens up her mix-up game and things of that sort. Because of that mobility, that can be a matter of complexity with her. It's just kind of getting used to how she moves. And also her execution and just overall combo conversion capability can be tough. Like takes a little bit of work in order to make her consistent and getting damage and maximizing potential with the character. I feel like I see this in full motion when I see players like Fullman and Chop Suey play, you know?
Chop Suey definitely has a good understanding of like neutral game with Izuyoi, and Fullman is like total mobility control. It's insane how fast he makes Izuyoi look. I think another good example is like Shige from Japan. They play Izuyoi in a very neutral heavy sense. They like to lock you down with her, abuse her hover dash mix to like near full potential.
And then our last character we have here is Azriel.
So I think he's a very valuable character. Complexity, if we're going from like 1 to 10 with these characters, he's probably on like a 2. Most people will say he's a gorilla, but if you've ever tried to do like a long combo with Azriel, you're not going to nail it every time. He has a weak point system in his combos where you need to hit the same button at a just frame. The window gets smaller and smaller as the combo goes on. One of the best Azriels in the world right now, Grunzon, has totally mastered this. He will nail weak points 8 days out of the week. But in terms of like game plan, I'd say he's very simple. Another complex thing about him is his mobility. He doesn't have a run. He has it's like a step forward. It's like a Slayer dash. He's not the fastest character, but man, he can move.
Cool. Okay, well, yeah, that summarizes the valuable but will take work ordered by complexity territory. I wanted to go through each character one by one because, as you can see, they all kind of have their nuance of why they were placed within this tier. Some is kind of related to execution, some is kind of related to game plan, but the main thing that we wanted to emphasize with the characters on this tier is that they are good characters. Again, some of them are as good, if not better, than characters in the Amazing Choices tier. That's how good some of these characters are, but they do carry a little bit of complexity, so we want you all to keep that in mind. Jumping over to the if you think they're cool, you should 100% do it tier. This is the tier for specialist type of characters, similarly to the valuable but will take work tier. Some of these characters are on this list for different reasons than others.
They're all very niche. They're not bad, but they're not meta defining. They each have like their own issues that they deal with, but they also have their own strengths that they like nail perfectly. For example, like Mitsuru.
Yeah, no, Mitsuru is a great character to kind of start off with. If you're into like the sword character type of playstyle, disjointed normals, she does that extremely well. But a disjointed normal type of playstyle may not be something that people are completely used to. Her approach to the game is pretty high-low centric. That's kind of like what her win condition is. So with that, her team construction can be kind of picky. She's not as immediately synergistic with a lot of the characters in the game. You do have to be kind of selective with some of the partners that you give to her. That's kind of like the way that it goes with like a character like Mitsuru on this list. Is if you think they're cool, you should definitely commit to it. It's not a bad idea to pick the character, but you should know that like when approaching these characters, it's gonna maybe take some out of the box approach, or they may not be as much of a glue type of character as some of the characters in like the amazing and great choices category.
Like I said earlier, these characters have like their own specific win cons, and they're really good at them. But they need to focus on those win cons. It's not like the characters above where they have win cons, but they also have game plans around that if they're struggling a little bit. These characters need to do their best to stick to said win con, or they're going to struggle a little bit.
Going off of that too, another thing that I want to emphasize in making sure that it's also illustrated that this is not a tier list is that a lot of the characters on this tier have seen success. Hashimo literally plays Ori Weiss. That's characters that are both on this tier. And we saw Hashimo and Taku doing a massive amount of work. Mitsuru, played by Juno Cisco. Juno made top 8 at Frosty Faustings. Jubei, played by Kiyomi. They got second place at Vortex Gallery, which is a super stacked BBTAG tournament happened at Evo. New
Elon.
Freaking, yeah, Elon, like one CEO, top 3 at CEO Taku and 1 CEO 2021. So like none of these characters are bad and have even been proven to be extremely effective at the high level. It's just, again, I think you put it perfectly with what they bring to the table. Getting more into that specialist type of tier is just something that you should be wary of.
I guess you could take Hyde, Jin, Lene, Weiss, and Aurier as like exceptions, because these are the characters that need to be fundamentally sound to be made to work. The others have like set win cons. The ones that I just named don't have like really apparent win cons. They're kind of like, oh, I'm just gonna, or be so fundamentally sound, I'm gonna make it work.
All right, we are down to our final 2 tiers. So we are going to the may come with some struggles category. So this is still getting into a specialist type of tier, but these characters, either they like have some shortcomings that you should be aware of if you're going to be going with the characters, or they like don't scale very well into the high level, or there's just a lack of representation for them to where it's actually going to be, it's one of the beauties of BBTAG, but it's also one of the curses of BBTAG. These characters might require a lot of innovation from you. Like if you want to play them just straight up, like the representation is not really there, you're not going to really have a lot to study off of, and this game is like 4 years old. If you are feeling it like a passion project, you have an idea of what you want to execute with one of these characters, by all means, give it a try. But these are some of the more underexplored characters, or there are some of the characters that even if they have been explored, just aren't as immediately like valuable, right?
The name of the tier is like a perfect summary. You can play these characters if you want, but you're going to struggle a little bit. Like, for example, Kanji, he's a good example. He's good in the right hands. Like, if you look at puns, for example, he makes Kanji look high tier. But if you really dig deep down into, like, Kanji's tools and whatnot, he's going to get outshined by, like, a good majority of the cast. Not to say he's bad, he's just insanely power crept.
Right. Yeah, 1000%. I think it's almost even fair to say that like some of these characters can get into more gimmicky categories. Gimmick always has like a bad representation, I feel like, when it's used in FGC terms, because I think gimmick, people tend to associate that with being like fake or like bad. And in this case, I don't think gimmick really means that negative connotation. Some of these characters' win conditions or like some of their tools may be tied to situations that like a lot of people may not be super familiar with. They may not have immediate counterplay to, but it also may like take some time to like actually get familiar with yourself, because it's just like something that's so specific to the character. So like Platinum's assists, some of her assists, right? They're completely random.
Yes, yeah. So one out of 3 options, or I think it's 1 out of 3 options on some of her assists.
Right. And so like having that as something that's within your character kit as you're trying to learn the game, I don't know if it's the immediate thing that I would suggest to someone in a game that is so 2v2 centric, is so like kind of focused around control of both of your characters and making them work within like active switch and cross combo and even like neutral and combo scenarios. Platinum may come with some struggles. You know, Yukiko, although she has pretty simple, like at first when you're looking at type of kit in terms of like, oh yeah, she has fans, she throws those out, she has a different like myriad of projectiles, and then she has like massive persona normals, quote unquote, that kind of like cover the screen. Getting her to work is highly reliant on either playing a perfect zoning type of playstyle or building up her fire level stacks, which is like something in its own that is almost like its own little mini game of like trying to get the special move out in order to make yourself become what some would say a real character so that you can play the game. So very Phoenix Wright-esque. Like Phoenix Wright, Yukiko may come with some struggles because of that. So that's really, I think, what this tier comes down to, is just like in some cases they do fall under the same mindset, and I think BBTAG in itself really falls under the mindset of like, if you think they're cool, you should 100% do it. However, if we're looking at this from a impact on the meta standpoint, if we're looking at this on like a is this character a good character to learn the game with standpoint, and if we're looking at this as like a does this character scale well into high level standpoint, the characters in the may come with some struggles, require some innovation, and aren't as immediately proven as like any of the characters that are above them. All right, do we have anything else to say before we shit on these characters? Be careful.
Nah, I think it's time to let him know. Like this tier is, I'm never gonna tell anyone to not play a character, but I will highly recommend to rethink their decisions when looking at these four.
Yeah, 100%. Like these four characters, and some of them kind of hurt my heart because I really like Noelle and I really like Celica, but it's kind of like one of like a few things. Like it may be a matter of what they're attempting to do is not stable enough, and there's probably characters that do it way better. Is one thing, or there's like just heavy consistency issues that kind of goes beyond the realm of being niche and goes beyond the realm of being a quirk, and it's like borderline problematic.
I think like a nice little summary is like, these characters are hard to play. It's not that they're complex, it's that you are going to struggle playing with these characters. Like for example, Tager has no walk speed, has one jump, has no air dash. He can pull people towards you, but his buttons are so slow and he's so big that sometimes it may not matter if you're able to pull them towards you. He can win. It's just, you know, you better be careful with what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like another thing, these characters also don't fit in the meta very well. Like a lot of the meta is kind of dictated by a lot of people that we have in like amazing choices in the great choices category. There is a lot of like screen control centric play styles that are coming into play with like Adachi and like Yumi and Hilda, but then also like lockdown centric play styles that are happening with like Akatsuki, right? Vatista, characters of that sort. And like these characters not only don't contribute to those playstyles, but also they kind of suffer fighting them. Like Tager especially, I feel it's a combination of executing what they do is hard, and also where they fit within the overall scope of BBTAG at the moment is not in a great standing.
Navigating the crazy game that is BBTAG is going to be hell with these characters.
All right, cool. So yeah, that is the overall overview of what we have here for this list of characters that you should look into if you want to pick up BBTAG. Again, I know a lot of people have been having their eyes on this game due to like the recent announcements to like Project L and like some of the mechanics in that game. So by all means, feel free to consult this list if you're trying to construct a team. Also, be sure to check out the Intertwining Fates server. So that's also another thing that kind of prompted the idea of doing this video. They're running a beginner tournament. So if you are interested in trying out BBTAG and you want to play in a bracket full of people that are at your skill level that are also just trying out the game, or maybe at a similar skill level, like maybe you're jumping back into BBTAG or anything like that, check them out. I'll have a link in the description of this video of their server. But I did get confirmation that it's not a one-time thing. They'll be running multiple of these events.
I believe they said
bi-weekly.
I believe they said bi-weekly, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So be sure to keep them in mind. There's a couple of other things that I wanted to do here. So although this list gives you a great idea of characters that are good to pick up the game with, just because of like limitations of like this style and also just overall expansiveness of this game, there's hundreds and hundreds of teams that you can play. One thing that is kind of hard to illustrate is who works well together. What I would urge people to do if they are trying to look at who works well together, one, join like the main chord for BBTAG. Every single character has its own dedicated channel within that Discord that also has delegated specialists for said character, and a lot of them have resources, including one type of resource that is very useful to check the pins for, like the synergy chart. So it actually shows you, in their opinion, which characters work well with one another. So if you're looking at this list and you're like, man, I really like Ragna, but I also really like Susanoo. They're great choices, but do they work well together? That's a good place to start, right? Maybe to kind of see if they do have any synergies based off of what's said in that channel. Another thing I would recommend is a little website called Keep On Rockin'. So this is a database. You may have seen something similar for like Strive or Rev2 or Melty, of multiple people across the world, basically match footage. So like this is just a pivotal tool if you're trying to learn the game in the first place, if you want like a match footage database. But what you can do is, like, let's say that you're interested in playing Rachel. You're like, you know, I really like Rachel. She has like this zoning play style, but I'm not sure who to play her with. Maybe I should play her with Batista. Is Rachel Batista a good team? You could pop in Rachel, and then you can pop in Batista, and boom, turns out there's some footage of Rachel Batista. I'm even in there. I'm right there. I fought Pikachu. They're a fantastic Rachel Batista player, and it just gives you a whole entire resource of like Rachel Batista not only allowing for you to study footage, but also maybe giving you an idea that maybe this is a team that like is worth using. Maybe it had some synergy on like the other end of the spectrum. Who's gonna generate no results? What if I looked up like Rachel Narukami? There we go.
No
There's no
results.
Rachel Narukami. So
It's just
yeah, you're probably either gonna have to do some innovation, or it may not be an immediately available team. You know, you'll have to make your own deduction from there. But I wanted to point out those resources for people that are curious about synergy. And speaking of synergy, last but not least, I want to get an idea. Let's keep it to 3 suggestions. All right, give me 3 teams that you think are excellent teams to learn BBTAG with.
Oh, top of the list is going to be Yumi Ruby. I think second would be Ruby Adachi. And then third would be Yumi Adachi. Those 3 in any particular order, I think they play the game the best. I think, okay, so the thing is, like, those 3 use the system mechanics to like their fullest extent. They're all super easy. They all synergize near perfectly, and they all have the benefit of being some of the top teams, like tier 0 teams.
All right, so editor's note, I had a really hard time while we were recording this thinking of another 3 characters that I wanted to add to supplement what Scrub said, because Ruby Yumi was definitely on my list, and then he named 2 other teams that I think are very, very good choices for learning the game with, but I think I have 3 more that I want to add into the mix. First and foremost, Narukami Adachi. We actually talked about this, but Narukami Adachi is a very good team, similar to the concept of Yumi Adachi, where they're able to lock you down, not too hard to play. Both characters are pretty easy to pick up, so I think that's a fantastic team to play, and not to mention, definitely one of the best teams in the game. There's some people that believe that is the best team in the game. I also want to mention Yang Akatsuki. I think this is a fantastic team of, if you're looking to really excel in a rushdown playstyle type of sense, and have building blocks that you can implement into your offense as it relates to learning how to set up unblockables and the nuance behind that, and just really want to punch people or be extremely violent, Yang Akatsuki is a team that I feel like you can't go wrong with. The team is really, really fun. And last but not least, I would recommend Susanoo Yumi. Susanoo Yumi is a team that gives you massive reward on hit for punish opportunities. The neutral is relatively straightforward. They support each other relatively well, and it's just a team that can cause a flurry of destruction, but it's also relatively easy to play in my opinion. You'll notice all three of these teams have fantastic lockdown and are really terrifying to block. That's a very powerful position to be in BBTAG, is if your opponent is scared on defense, and all three of these teams can make you very terrified on defense. Awesome. Yeah, I can't think of anything much else either, besides, you know, if you watch this video and you enjoyed it, you know, be sure to, you know, everything every FGC YouTuber says, like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you like saw this and you want to ask us questions, you can reach out to us on Twitter. I have a Twitter. My Twitter is @KrakenAtkins, and I believe YoFavScrub has a Twitter. Yeah, @FavScrub. That's FAVSCRUB. I'll be sure to have those links in the descriptions. But thank you all for watching. I swear to God, this is not becoming a tier list channel based off of the last two videos here. I want to thank Scrub again for joining me for this one, and y'all have a good one and keep playing some BBTAG. See ya.